Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I want to talk to you about condescension, about being rude, controlling, intimidating. The argument from intimidation is Ayn Rand's name for it. Spike Bravo has recently posted a couple of videos where he reads nearly verbatim Ayn Rand's, with interspersed comment, Ayn Rand's essay by that name, The Argument from Intimidation. So I don't need to go over that particular detail, but what we want to talk about is the concerns that Aaron has with it. Aaron is concerned about condescensions. He's concerned. Now, he was in Vegas. We met in Vegas, and we had a very long conversation, hours, in the course of which I found that he is primarily concerned with emotions. He believes they come before anything else. So I'm not necessarily going to talk about condescension as such. We are going to learn why Aaron's extraordinary concerns about it are very misplaced, and he would spend his time worrying about other things more fruitfully. And I'm not saying that the argument from intimidation isn't used, and I'm not saying that it is valid. Okay, it is used and is not valid. But are his concerns about condescension valid? Are they well-placed concerns, or are they frivolous and extraneous? Let us see. So we will look at two theoretical situations. And we're going to speak in sort of non-concretized terms. So let me start out by giving you a general concrete. We're just talking about a value speaker on a podium and an audience. So get anything in your mind where you've ever seen a man at a podium and an audience. Now, we're going to look at two situations. We're going to look at a situation where an audience member is offended and where he's not. And we're going to look at two aspects to each of those, where the offense was attended by the speaker and where it was not, in both cases. In the first case, where the audience member hears the idea, he hears the idea from the speaker. Now the speaker sends this idea condescendingly. The speaker is trying to get people to be insulted in this particular sentence. Maybe he's right about this, maybe he's wrong, maybe he should or shouldn't do it, but his intent, his emotional intent is there. It was there in his willpower, in his mind, when his pen was on the paper and he wrote this sentence or typed it or whatever. And we're talking now about this audience member who hears this idea and actually hears the intent to intimidate in it, but does not feel intimidated. Doesn't feel intimidated. Maybe he sees the truth and maybe he doesn't, but he doesn't feel intimidated. Because the idea is what the issue is, isn't it? Not the package. So the person hearing it, say they're intimidated, maybe. Maybe they see the truth of it and they are intimidated. Okay, maybe they see the truth of the idea, but they don't get the intimidation part. It floats right past them. And later on they realize, oh, he was trying to sort of insult me if he said that I believed the other way. But why would I believe the other way? The other way is irrational. So why would I be insulted by that, even though that used to be the way I believed? But I saw the logic of his statement, so I wasn't insulted, I was converted. So he meant to insult me. But because his argument was logical with which the insult came, I was actually converted to his viewpoint and saw his laughing at the former ridiculous idea. So even though he meant to insult me, he didn't insult me because I was converted to his viewpoint. That's an option. Or, and here's the one that Aaron's worried about, somebody gets insulted. Ooh. And they get this feeling inside of them. This feeling. It's a feeling. And even though the glaring logic of the argument is obvious to the person, because it's right there in that same sentence where they got that bad feeling, even though there's logical argument, even though the argument is clear and makes its case, they rebel against that argument, reject it, because it was packaged with an insult. Now, we were going to look at a case where the person gets insulted and it was intended, and where they get insulted and it wasn't intended. Here's the problem. That person can get insulted whether or not it's intended, because they aren't bringing logic to the table. Logic isn't their primary concern, emotion's their primary concern. And that's a problem with that listener's methodology in mind. That is not a problem the speaker can concern himself with and structure his ideas and philosophy and presentation around. The neurosis of certain listeners, because the listener doesn't care about logic, because the listener places primary importance on their emotional response to the speaker. Because of that, this listener doesn't get the logical conclusion the speaker is trying to get over to them. The speaker may or may not intend condescension, may or may not intend to insult. The first situation we looked at, they did intend it, and that doesn't always get over to the listener, because the listener, if the listener's logical, the condescension passes them right by, and they say, oh, that's condescending towards idiots, that's condescending towards people who think such and such. The listener, if they get the logical clarity of the argument coming across, can't get the condescension bit, and let's say they do. Let's say they do see that they're being condescended, and then the only option is, you've converted me, I see the logical of your argument, I believe your argument, and I feel insulted. It's impossible. It's impossible. That's impossible, except by complete neurotics. So the people who feel insulted don't see the logic of the argument, don't care about the logic of the argument. The logic of the argument is not a concern for them. We should say is not an emotional concern for them, because emotion is the only thing they're concerned with. So why would the logic of the argument bear any, relevance whatsoever to their reaction? They're not concerned with the logic of the argument. They're concerned with their emotions. So it doesn't matter how the speaker puts it across. Even if the speaker puts condescension in with his message, the people who get the logic of the message won't feel insulted. On the other hand, the people who feel insulted won't get the logic of his message, no matter what. And it doesn't matter how nice he is. If he comes on there and honey drips from his tongue, they'll mock and laugh at him. If he comes on there and he's condescending and rude, like Christopher Hitchens, a lot of people will clap, and other people just stand right up and walk out and say, what I'm saying is, if they have cut themselves off from logic, you're not going to get to them no matter how nice you are. In fact, with honey dripping off your tongue and trying not to insult them and trying never to be condescending and trying never to cause a ruckus, you're very likely going to sound inane and boring to them, and they're not even going to listen. You're going to sound like a politically correct multiculturalist, and they're not even going to care what you have to say. So the conclusion is, condescension is an emotional issue, which is a side issue. It is not a central issue. It is not essential to the forming or to the communication of ideas. Ideas are formed using logic and communicated using logic. Other incidentals coming along the side do not affect the essentials. They're window dressing. That's why, as we've seen, condescension may or may not be packaged with it by the speaker, and it may or may not be gotten by the person who's listening. At any given time, any number of different relationships can obtain, but the only relationship that's important, the only relationship that any rational person should be concerned with, is the relationship of the ideas. Are the ideas the speaker is offering logical? And does the person who's rejecting them have a logical reason to reject them, or do they accept the ideas logical as they are regardless of the package? Aaron, sir, I'm afraid you're an emotionalist.